I am Lamont at Large. Today, I am at the Glen Abbey Memorial Park Cemetery here in San Diego, California. I'm here to visit the grave of Kevin Charles Brown, a man who was accused of a very heinous and horrible crime, and a man who, some people say, took a very dark secret to the grave. Kevin Charles Brown was a criminalist, basically a CSI guy. He worked for the San Diego Police Department Crime Lab. His job was to go to crime scenes, photograph the evidence, bag it, collect it, analyze it back at the lab. He did that for around 20 years. And then eventually he got a job offer to work at the New Mexico State Crime Lab, which he did for about 5 years, and then he finally retired. If you ask his wife, Rebecca, to describe her husband, to use her own words, she would say he was a goofy nerd with a pretty funny personality when he was around those that he trusted and that he was comfortable with. His coworkers, pretty unassuming guy, quiet. They would also call him some kind of a nerd, and somewhat unremarkable. But an unremarkable life was surely a remarkable death. So I want to talk really quickly about a murder that occurred here in San Diego, California on August 24th, 1984. A teenage girl, Claire Huff, was found dead at Torrey Pines State Beach. Here she was raped and murdered. Now, back in those days, DNA technology wasn't as good as it was now. So back then they did swabs of her body, her rectum, her vaginal area, her mouth, and they put it away for evidence for a later date and time when the technology would become better for them to test it against other DNA samples. The detectives that worked that particular case felt that the murderer of Claire was also possibly the same murderer of a woman by the name of Barbara Nante, who was killed almost exactly 6 years ago from that murder on August 13th, 1978. So, a cold case often gets forgotten about, and it goes on the back burner, and there's about 8 detectives that work in San Diego County that strictly work cold cases, and sometimes when they get an itch, they pull up a cold case and they'll go ahead and review the facts and the findings, try to contact people that they previously spoke with in hopes of maybe their memory jogs something now. And one of the detectives that brought up that cold case of Claire Huff was a man by the name of Michael Lambert. And for some odd reason, he ordered a DNA test on the swabs that had been in storage for the 20 some odd years that they had been there. Now, really quickly, there is an enzyme called acid phosphatase, and basically there's higher concentrations of international units in semen versus saliva. And the technology getting better, he ordered a DNA analysis, and a very peculiar DNA analysis and profile came up. And the man's DNA profile that came up on the swab that was taken from Claire Huff was Kevin Brown. Now you're probably thinking, if you're a detective and you come up with a DNA profile of a man, bingo, bingo, you got the killer. Now, not so fast there, not so fast. So he looked up Kevin Brown and found that, oh, this guy used to work at the crime lab out here. So they went to the Browns' residence and spoke with Kevin about the murder. Now, Kevin Brown at the time, he did work at the lab, but he did not work on that case. Now, you're wondering, well, how did his semen get on a vaginal swab of a young murder victim? So when they asked him what could have possibly happened, he immediately told them it's very possible that there was some cross-contamination. Now, this might sound a little bit odd to you guys, but back in the 80s, when you worked at a crime lab, to cross-reference DNA samples to make sure that the reagents and the enzymes and all that stuff were working properly, a manager of a lab might ask, one of the lab technicians, hey, does anybody want to submit their blood and or semen for cross-reference checks for whatever unknown reason? I'm not a scientist, so I have no idea why they would do that. But like I said, to make sure everything is working correctly and smoothly. So I'm sure there was a time or two that Kevin volunteered, and that's quite possibly what happened. But the detective in the case was not going to just let that go. He actually got a search warrant from a judge to search the Browns' residence, to search the cars. They came with a search warrant, took out 15 boxes of quote-unquote evidence, or whatever they felt what evidence was: family pictures, clothing, videos, and not just any regular videos. I believe some adult videos. Anything that they could hopefully use in a case against him. His phones, computers, laptops, stuff like that. And Rebecca, his wife, is wondering, well, what the hell is going on here? And he tells her, hey, this is obviously a mistake. He's not worried about it because he's an innocent guy. So it probably got contaminated, and they think I'm the guy. Now, Barbara and Claire's murders, however close they were in relation, the detectives at the time felt that the murderer of Claire was the same murderer as Barbara, because a couple of the gruesome details of the crime were similar to each killing. It was in the fact that they were both raped and murdered. They were both strangled. And Claire's breast was amputated with a knife, and Barbara's was partially amputated. So that kind of tells you we're dealing with a sick bastard right here, and we're dealing likely with the same killer. Now, a weird fact about the DNA evidence collected from Claire was that there was blood that was found on her pants. The blood was not Kevin's. They analyzed it, and the blood matched up to a DNA profile belonging to a man by the name of Ronald Tatro. At the time, Ronald Tatro was on parole in California for the rape of a 16-year-old girl, and also he was a main suspect in a murder of a prostitute from El Cajon, which is very close nearby. Now, you have a murder suspect whose blood is on the pants of a girl who was murdered, along with him being a rapist. Now, you would think that you would go after this guy, because obviously this guy is probably the one that did it, except for he had already been dead for a few years. He died in a boating accident in Tennessee in 2011. So the detectives feel that they gotta get this guy. They feel that this guy is the killer. and they tried to make up a criminal profile of Kevin Brown. This is the profile they came up with: that Kevin was a sex addict. He was a pervert. Just a basic a quiet guy on the outside, but a sexual deviant on the inside. Now, how did they come up with this profile of an unassuming man whose own wife would call him a nerd, just a goofy nerd? Well, they interviewed several co-workers of his that had worked with Kevin throughout the years, and one time somebody had remarked that Kevin had watched a pornographic video from his phone while he was at work with another coworker, and I guess she saw it from across the room. The coworker that Kevin worked with denied the allegation. And also there was the time that somebody was driving down the street and during everyone's lunch break had noticed Kevin walking out of an adult bookshop or video store with, quote, his fly undone. Now, I don't know why you would even look down there, but that's what they said. Oh, his fly was undone and he went to a video store. Oh, well, automatically then I guess you assume that he's a sex pervert and he's a sex creep. Well, I listen. To each their own. I used to work at one of those places myself. So, yeah, a lot of guys kind of go during their lunch break. They go watch an adult pornographic video and they do whatever it is they feel they need to do, and then they leave. That is it. And there was also stories of Kevin kind of like talking, or not really boasting, but talking about his exploits of going to different strip clubs around the San Diego area. Sorry to break it to you guys, but a lot of guys do those types of things that Kevin did, and it's totally normal. It's something that stays behind closed doors, like it obviously should. So they're trying to paint this guy as this quote-unquote sex freak. And by the time Kevin is flustered, he is the main suspect in a gruesome murder, and possibly two gruesome murders. Him already doing the kind of work that he has done for the last 25 some odd years of seeing dead bodies, seeing horrible crime scenes, dealing with the family members, what have you. You develop some kind of PTSD from it, and it was quite known that he would seek some kind of mental counseling from time to time, dealing with all that he had to see. So this man was already kind of a nervous Nelly, so to speak, and his wife said that it got worse. It got to the point he didn't want to get out of bed. He was contemplating taking his own life. He didn't know what to do. She was very, very worried about her husband's mental state, his failing mental state. She had said that there was a bullet on the nightstand with a note to his wife thanking her for the 20 years of marriage and that he just couldn't do it anymore. She was getting very, very worried about his fragile mental state and immediately removed all guns from the home. And as the investigations took place, even more so, them gathering evidence, them telling Kevin and his wife Rebecca that they would return whatever evidence they took from the house at a certain date, and yet they still had the evidence. It was more than what Kevin can take. And finally, the pain, mental anguish simply became too unbearable for Kevin to deal with. On October 21st, 2014, he drove his truck to a cabin that him and Rebecca owned, pulled his truck to the side of the road, found a suitable tree, and he hung himself from it. This is his grave right here. Kevin Charles Brown, March 24th, 1952, to October 21st, 2014. And it appears that the date of conception, June 1951, is on there. Kind of an odd thing on a grave, but his wife said he was an odd guy. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon and give you peace. The date of the recording of this video is July 1st of 2020. Just in February of this year, Rebecca won a settlement. A jury awarded her $6 million in a wrongful death lawsuit that she filed against the San Diego Police Department. And even after he hung himself, Detective Lambert and District Attorney Investigator Sandra Oplinger were still investigating this guy for the murder of Claire Hoff. And earlier in the video, how I told you Barbara Nante was murdered in a similar fashion, at the time of her murder, they couldn't pin that on Kevin here because he was going to school at the time in Sacramento. So even though you had such two similar murders, they couldn't pin the earlier 1978 murder on him simply because he was a student in school and had an alibi. But they could pin Claire's murder on him because of what it seems to me to be cross-contamination. Now, I wish that Kevin could have seen what took place, that his name and death was cleared. You know, different people do different things when it comes to the pressures of just everyday life, and that is a lot of pressure to be accused of a murder that you had nothing to do with. But in him taking his own life and in death, he took a secret to his grave, being that any normal person's rational mind is that if you're an innocent man, you wouldn't do what Kevin felt the need to do. Now, please do not misconstrue my words. I am not accusing this man. I am not accusing this man of the murder. I am not. Please do not mix my words. But what I am saying is that never take a permanent solution for a temporary problem, no matter how big that problem might be. But it seems in his death that his name was finally cleared. But at the end of the day, I guess we never truly know. There will unfortunately be always doubt with certain people about this man's innocence. And really quick to touch on the blood evidence found on her jeans from the rapist Ronald Tatro. It's sad that the detectives felt that in their minds a likely scenario would have been that Kevin raped Claire Hoff and then she stumbles onto the desert and then Ronald Tatro's just waiting there to kill her. I mean, that's obviously what they were thinking, and it's very, very sad. So, who knows? Who knows? Anyways, guys, I'm Lamont at Large. I'm signing off. Thank you for watching my video. I appreciate it. I'll catch up with you on the next vlog. Peace out.